We know that Ed Miliband was an early supporter of Burnham, very, very much wants the job. He was in the Treasury, worked for Gordon Brown for a lot of years before he became an MP. If he appoints Miliband, I think you can possibly sense that, you are going to see rises of tax for an investment. But Miliband is quite a divisive figure, even on the left of politics. And it may be that Burnham doesn't want sort of a big character like Miliband in that role.
Let's take a look at some of the day's biggest political stories that you should be watching out for as the day progresses. And we are joined by the policy editor of The Times, Oliver Wright. Good morning, Oliver.
Morning.
So Andy Burnham says he's got room to raise some taxes and not to break Labour's election manifesto pledge. How do you square that?
Well, Labour's manifesto pledge is quite specific. It says that they will not raise income tax, won't raise VAT, and won't raise national insurance. Now, those are obviously the three big taxes that affect individuals. But, as everyone knows, there are lots and lots of tools within the Treasury's box to raise money that don't involve those, three big levers. He can do things to business rates. He could potentially do stuff with corporation tax, and he could, bring in new taxes altogether. So, that I think is a signal from Burnham that, he is looking at tax, and that a sort of Burnham premiership could, result in the sort of overall burden of taxation going up.
OK, yeah, I know. Well, there's a lot of kind of conversation about who will be making those decisions with him, who the Chancellor will be. The big rumour, Ed Miliband becoming the next Chancellor. But I wonder, Ollie, what you think, because Andy Burnham has said people are entitled to put their case forward, sort of pitch themselves for a job, but they need to understand the direction he wants to take the country in. Do you think, from the interview we've had now and what Andy Burnham said in that speech, do you think we know what direction he wants to take the country in?
It's a very good question. I mean, I think we have some of the broad themes. Clearly the big mission, as it were, of a Burnham government is going to be devolving power away from Westminster, giving much more power to regional mayors, these things called strategic authorities, which take in sort of, they're bigger than local councils. So you're going to see a lot more power go to them. But clearly, as you say, who he appoints as his Chancellor is going to be a sort of pivotal decision. Is going to give us perhaps the biggest clue to, how radical he wants to be. Now, we know that Ed Miliband was an early supporter of Burnham, very, very much wants the job. He was in the Treasury, worked for Gordon Brown for a lot of years before he became an MP. If he appoints Miliband, I think you can possibly sense that, you are going to see rises of tax for an investment. But Miliband is quite a divisive figure, even on the left of politics. And it may be that Burnham doesn't want sort of a big character like Miliband in that role, and you could possibly look at someone like Pat McFadden, who is the Work and Pension Secretary. Now, he's perceived, as it were, to be on the right of the Labour Party. Another person is Shabana Mahmood, who is the current Home Secretary, again, as seen on the right of the party. Both of those two would perhaps be designed to sort of send a message to the markets that, he is going to be responsible, he is going to stick to these fiscal rules. I know he's said he's going to do that anyway, but, I think there's still a bit of nervousness about whether he might try and tweak them within the market. So, that role of Chancellor is going to be utterly crucial, and I don't think we're going to get it soon. I think you're going to have to see Burnham actually walk into Downing Street before he says who his Chancellor will be.
Yeah, and then, my goodness, we've got that sort of 50-plus appointments that have to be made in about 2 days, so it's going to be a real flurry of announcements. And, well, journalists stood outside Number 10 looking for who comes in the door smiling and who leaves maybe crying. Also, Ollie, today, we've been speaking to the chair of the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee about really what Andy Burnham's government's relationship is going to be like with big tech. We've heard about sort of potentially taxing big warehouses, so that would be Amazon. What happens about X and the ban on social media? Well, Chiamura, the chair, outlined the risks of becoming too reliant on a small number of American tech firms with big contracts.
I haven't spoken to Andy Burnham specifically on this, but my committee, the Science, Innovation and Tech Select Committee, did a big inquiry into the digitalisation of the state, as part of the government's ambition to bring forward efficiencies, and also the NHS in particular going from analog to digital. And we identified real barriers in that very laudable ambition, and one of them was a dependency on a very small number of US tech firms. Another was vendor lock-in, and a third was public trust. And if you like, and I think part of the issue here with the Palantir NHS contract is that that's sort of like the poster boy for all three of those issues.
Palantir, Ollie, of course, have got contracts across government departments, particularly in terms of policing. What do you think Andy Burnham is weighing up there in terms of our exposure in these government contracts that are held then with huge US firms?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big dilemma for Burnham. I mean, I remember that report that the Science Select Committee did, and it was, it was typical of these reports. It was not bad at diagnosing a problem. It was much poorer at actually coming up with solutions for these things. Because if you take the NHS, this contract that Palantir has made some pretty substantive improvements to NHS productivity in terms of getting more people treated faster, getting more people out of hospital faster. And it's all very well to say you don't like reliance on American tech and we've got to do it all ourselves. But, if you end up waiting for 3 months longer for your operation because as a point of ideology, you say, actually, we don't want to be reliant on this American tech firm, I think most voters would sort of question that. And also, if you're a politician who are promising to bring down waiting lists, you might question that as well. So I think, these things are really, really tricky. I mean, no one would argue that, you want to be entirely reliant on companies that aren't based here. But you have to work out where you start from and be careful you don't sort of chuck the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's going to be so interesting to work out exactly what Andy Burnham does with big tech in general. Ollie, thank you. Ollie Wright, policy editor of The Times, bringing us sort of up to speed on the big political stories of the day and what to watch out for.